Hi, I'm JC Parets with allstarcharts.com, and we provide technical analysis research for investors all over the world, from the biggest banks and hedge funds down to individual investors trading their own portfolios. You can find me at allstarcharts.com. My most memorable moment in my finance career, I think, has to be the first week of January of 2008. I got into the business in 2003 is when I first started my internship at Merrill Lynch in New York and Connecticut. And I was very excited for my first bear market because from 2003 through 2007, stocks basically went straight up. And we had a couple of bouts of volatility, maybe early in 07, but the big storm was coming in 08, and I had just I was almost done with my CMT certification. I was about to become a chartered market technician. I finished that later in the spring in 2008, but at the time I had read enough books where that top seemed quite obvious at the time, and we broke my key levels. I was still young, but I did have important levels that I was trusting anyway at the time. They broke that first week of January 08, and I was running all around my office telling everybody how excited I was for my first bear market, and they obviously wanted nothing to do with that or hear that at all. Because a lot of them were long only, a lot of them didn't want to start shorting stocks. It was just going to be a new hassle for them, and I was young. I mean, I was only, how old was I? I was 26. So I was stoked for my first bear market. We started shorting all the banks. It was very, very exciting. So that's probably the most memorable moment in my life. Fortunately, I got that right. The investment I wish I can frame, and now that you mention it, I think I will, because it's probably a good reminder, is uranium. I caught the uranium bug in 2010. And, I'm like, yup, this is it. We got to buy uranium. So I had a diversified portfolio of the uranium ETF, the biggest uranium stock, CCJ, Cameco, and one of the little ones, real diversified, right? So that was my diversified portfolio of uranium. And I was gung-ho. We started making money. I think I'm the next Warren Buffett. And, that was about 10 years ago. And then there was an earthquake in the Pacific, and there was a nuclear meltdown in Fukushima in Japan, and uranium stocks did the same. They melted down also. And I was convinced that this was just an earthquake, and that turned into a tsunami, and it was going to come back. And as it turned out, my portfolio was the tsunami, as it turns out, and these uranium stocks 10 years later are still not back to where they were. So, that was a lesson that when you're wrong, you're wrong. Just move on. Get your ego out of it. When the information that you had before and the reason that you were buying something before, if that reason has now changed and key levels that you set out, which I guess I hadn't set it out at that point, breach, get out. You can always get back in. A pilot friend of mine always says that he'd rather be on the ground wishing he was in the air than in the air wishing he was on the ground. I would say a tip for my younger self would probably be to give myself more confidence so that I can make more mistakes. Because the younger you make these mistakes, the better. Because it's going to cost you a lot more down the road when you have more money. So maybe if I had been more confident and more aggressive younger, I would have made more mistakes and lost more early instead of having to learn some of these lessons the harder way down the road in some of the decisions that I made when I had more to risk and more to lose. So if I can give any advice to my younger self is to be more aggressive and be dumber and more reckless. Keep it simple, stupid. As the great J. Pierpont Morgan once said, stocks will fluctuate.